Welcome back to another episode of Gatehouse Insights. In today's episode, I speak to Richard Kobakian, who shares his wisdom on how to deal with disappointment, reimagining the future, what it means in order to thrive, you need to stay humble, and his new book, 60 Seconds to Save a Relationship. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the Gatehouse Legal Recruitment YouTube channel to see it all. Well, thank you for joining me today, Richard.
Thank you for having me. It's great. I think I'm getting better at this Zoom thing too.
I think we all are.
It's been challenging, but I think there's a real art to still be able to communicate, via technology. But I'm an in-person guy, as most of us are. I think this season has really helped us hone this skill.
Yeah, I think it has too.
Absolutely.
Now, I wanted to begin with a book you've just recently written and just arrived in my office. So
Yay.
It's 60 Seconds to Save Your Relationship. So I wanted to begin with what inspired you in writing the book.
Well, look, I know that it's a slightly controversial title, and I think some people may actually think that it's just a book for those that are in trouble. But the heart behind the book, it's got 44 chapters in there, right? And when I say chapters, they're basically one-page thoughts. And it's really come out of, and I know this sounds really dark and negative, but every one of those chapters are basically people who had some sort of behavior that they were expressing in their relationship, and in some ways lost their relationship or caused a huge relational breakdown. So I just thought, I've got to gather this information and try and get it into people's hands. And so it's been something that people have been harassing me about, and finally I've been able to put it together and get it out there.
I'm looking forward to reading it over the next coming days.
Great.
I suppose there are 44 chapters. What are the three biggest things you want people to take away from the book?
Yeah, people often ask me that, like, what's your, what would be your top 5 or top 10 or even number 1? Honestly, that is so hard because, like I said, every one of those chapters I've seen the damage of somebody doing one of those things. But if I was to choose 2, 3 of them, I would say probably number 1 is be honest. Always be honest in relationships. I've just seen so many relationships that have paid the big price because someone hasn't been honest, if not both people haven't been honest. What would be the next one? I think would be maybe respect and love. That a man really desires respect and the woman really needs to be loved. I think these are just things I find myself talking to people about over and over and over again. So now I just send them the book and tell them to read it. Probably the last one would be never use the D word, so divorce. People just throw that word around way too much. Just to be quite honest, even this morning, I was helping a couple out where the husband threatened divorce. And I'm like, and then when I spoke to him, he actually wasn't that serious about it, but it shook his wife to the point where it's made her think, what would my life look like if I was divorced? And you never want that. So don't ever sort of use that word if you're not planning to actually go ahead and do it. I would say they're probably my top 3. They're the ones I find myself talking to people about over and over and over again.
Yeah. So honesty, respect and love, and don't use the D word.
Yeah, basically don't threaten. Don't threaten if you're not dead serious. I just think it's disproportional, especially the D word. It's really disproportional to maybe what is happening in the relationship. So maybe you could say, I'm going to move out, or maybe you could say, I'm going to go live at my mum's, or I don't know. But to use the divorce word, what it does is people start to imagine what life would be like if they were divorced. And sometimes that's actually not as bad as they may think it is. In some ways, some people even get excited because it could put an end to all the arguing. And that wasn't your intention by using the divorce word. You were trying to scare them, but in actual fact, you almost gave them a way out.
Okay.
And I just think it's a really, really dangerous thing to do. So I deal with relationships seriously. Like even yesterday, 2 couples this morning, 6:30 a.m., 6:38 to be precise. A young lady calls me up. We're in trouble.
Okay.
So I love it, but man, you've got to be careful.
Yeah. I know who I'm calling. If it's 3 a.m., I'm going to call you now.
3 a.m.? All right. Can you just wait till at least 5 a.m.? 5 a.m. I'm happy to get up.
All right.
3 a.m.
If
3
I'm
a.m. It's really tricky. Can you just wait until 5 at least?
All right. I'll wait till 5. No, I won't be calling, don't worry. Life, I suppose, can pull us in different directions. So we can be pulled into the direction of family, work, finances, and things like that. And sometimes we can be pulled into one direction way too much. So it might be we're focusing too much on work and we forget everything else. How do we not tilt one way, and how do we give a balance? And is it possible to do that?
Yeah, look, I love that. The word balance, I think lately people have discovered, that's probably not a great response or a good solution to what you have just described as the problem. And that is because at different times you need to put more energy into different areas of your life, and balance demands that, for example, you've got 3 things going on and you've got 100% of your energies and times. So, everything should get 33%, 33%, 33%. That's just not true. Sometimes to get out of a tricky situation, it's going to demand that you give 65% to something for a short season, and everything else just needs to get the remaining, 35%. And then that changes over time depending on what people are going through. So if your family are going through a really difficult time, they probably require 90% of your time, and everything else needs to get 10. So what I would say is, I think purpose is the most important thing. What are you trying to achieve with your life? Is the most important thing to your business? Because if that's the case, your family will suffer. If family is your highest priority, then there's going to be times where your business will suffer, and friendships will suffer, and even your own fitness will suffer. And so you've got to work out what your purpose is, which is, what am I trying to achieve? What is your definition of success? Is it a lot of money, or is it you dying one day and your family around you at your deathbed saying, I really love my dad, or I really love my mum, or whatever, what is it? Because that's what's going to determine what you give your time to. So, for me, I look after 1,800 people. I could be out every night of the week, and I often am out a lot, but I've got to decide what's my highest priority: to build this, the biggest organization I can, or is it that my children love me? So for me, it's all about my family. So they are my highest priority. But believe it or not, they often don't need a lot of energy. Even though they are my highest priority, they don't need a lot of energy. And sometimes a smaller priority just needs far more energy to get the thing off the ground. So balance, no. Purpose, yes. What are you trying to achieve? And then from there, okay, so what are your priorities then? What needs the most attention right now? And that's a moving target, like daily. What needs my attention right now? And this is the thing, Louise, this is what I've discovered. It's actually a statement. Don't abuse the bend. I'll say that again. Don't abuse the bend. And what I mean by that is, business doesn't bend. There are deadlines, there are meetings you've got to attend, there are emails that have to be sent, and other business people don't give you any flexibility, right? You've got to send that email, it's got to go. You've got to, some type of project that you've got to present to, it's got to be done at 11:30 a.m. on Thursday, for example, right? But what does bend? Your family, cancelling a dinner engagement with your wife, that bends, right? And it's flexible. So what we tend to do is we constantly abuse the bend. Mm-hmm. What ends up happening one day is that wife, your children, whatever it may be, get so disappointed that it really causes a relationship breakdown, and the thing that mattered to you the most falls apart.
Interesting.
Because you abuse. So fitness, you can abuse the bend. It'll be okay if I don't work out for a month, 2 months, 2 years, you're too busy. All of a sudden your body starts to fail you. Well, you can't build a business if you don't have a body. Can't love your family if you don't have a body. If you're dead, can't achieve much. But we always abuse the bend. And I would just encourage you, don't abuse. Just because something's flexible, don't abuse it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I like it. I like that, I like it because it's so true. We constantly move everything else that mean the most. It's so important to us. So yeah. I like the concept.
often the things that matter the most are the things that bend.
Correct.
Which is so tricky, isn't it? Because then you go, there's flexibility there, so I'll use that space. But yeah, I've just learned not to do that, So
how do you learn not to do that? Is there any ways you can do it? So it's like, okay, I know I'm abusing the bend. How do I stop abusing the bend? How do we stop that?
Yeah, I for me, one of the most important things I do with my staff, with my family, of course, whoever, is to create a culture of feedback. So, if you join my staff, this is what I say to you. I'm assuming every time I walk past you in the corridor that your marriage is awesome, your kids love you, your finances are intact, your mentality is in a great place. And if one of those things is failing, I'm expecting you to tell me, to create some feedback. Tell me, I don't need you to be perfect. I can handle the disappointment. Please just come and tell me. I say to my wife constantly, hey, listen, I love you. You're my highest priority, but I don't want to have to keep checking in on you every 10 seconds to say, are you happy? If you're not happy about something, can you just really let me know? And we've got that relationship where she'll say, you know what, you've been neglecting me a bit lately. And I'm like, boom, shift. She's the priority. Everything has to move now because I don't want it to go down that road any further. So creating a great culture, a feedback culture. Of course, asking questions, I'll often ask my wife, are you happy? She laughs at me sometimes, but I constantly, are you happy? I say to my staff, hey, are you happy? And they know they can answer honestly. And then once I start to hear that something's not right, then I need to put some energy behind that. And I think another thing is, when you go to the doctor and they take your bloods, a doctor doesn't just look at you and just think, I think you look healthy, so that's good enough for me. No, they take bloods to get measurements. And I think we've got to be diligent in getting measurements, as in, how much time are we spending? How do you feel? Oh, you're crying 3 nights a week. Oh, right. And once you start to get some stats and some measures, you start to find out the health of something. And then from there, hey, look, I feel like I can't get out of bed sometimes. How often does that happen? And then from there, you can start to build, okay, how much energy do I need to put into this to move you forward?
A word you keep saying, or you've said a couple of times, is disappointment. Yes. And disappointment comes up in our lives, whether that be work, whether we're ordering something at a cafe, friends, family, whatever it might be. How do we better deal with disappointment so it doesn't get to us?
It's a great question, Louise, because I think people underestimate the power of disappointment. But there's good news with disappointment. And I speak about this a lot, so maybe that's why you're asking about it. But I speak on this topic a lot because, you wake up in the morning and you drive to your coffee shop and you don't get the car park you want, you're disappointed, right? It doesn't take long. It doesn't take long before this. And then they give you your coffee and it's the wrong blend. You're disappointed. And then someone turns up late that you're supposed to be meeting there for a coffee, you're disappointed. So you can be disappointed 30 times in an hour, right? And so disappointment is just a way of life. Now, the thing about disappointment is this, and I've written this down as a statement many, many times. Disappointment is a sign of deep passion. You're only disappointed about something you really care about. So it's actually a sign that you're alive and well. If you're never disappointed by anything, you don't love anything. And there are many things that don't disappoint me because I just don't care. If 2 teams are playing and one of them loses, I'm not disappointed because I don't follow either of those teams. So I'm not disappointed because I don't care. So disappointment is a sign that you are alive and well, right? But disappointment, I believe, is the tip of an arrow. And if it's not dealt with properly, then the rest of the arrow comes into your life. And so it starts with disappointment, but it very quickly leads to being discouraged if you don't deal with it. And then from being discouraged, you become disillusioned. From disillusioned, you become depressed. And from depressed, you become defeated. But it all started with the tip. And the tip was just that slight disappointment. So you've got to learn to deal with it. Now, I reckon I've got a couple of things that I do that I'd love to share with you. Did you know in the Jewish culture, right now, as we all know, the Jewish culture are quite prosperous people, most of them, right? They do very well in business. They're very smart people, seem to stay on top of things. I just discovered this recently. In the Jewish culture, they really hold a strong belief about disappointment. And this is it. You know, in Hebrew, there is no such word as disappointment.
Really?
It doesn't exist. Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Wow.
There's no word for disappointment. And, you know, we've created that word in the English language, right? But, you know, disappointment has got a prefix and a suffix, right? The prefix is the dis, the suffix is the ment, but the word in between is appointment, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why they don't have a word for disappointment, because to dis means to undo or to not have, right? That's what this means, disappointment. They don't believe that you can be unappointed. You can't be in other words, if something is destined to happen to you, no one can disappoint that.
Okay.
Yeah. Right? If you've got an appointment with me, okay, nothing can disappoint that. And so that's what they believe. So in other words, whatever happens, hey, there's a plan. There's a purpose. It's going to be okay. I'm still destined for success. And that's what the Hebrews believe, because there's no word for disappointment.
I love it.
Isn't that powerful?
It's
and
so
when you
good.
start to believe that, you know, I mean, you know, I'm obviously someone that has a deep faith in God, and I just believe that whatever God has appointed for my life is going to happen. And even though sometimes things happen that look like it's my career, my future has been disappointed, it hasn't been disappointed. I'm still on track.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go down a different one. That's all. But I'm still going to get there. And I think that's just, it's a mindset. It's a mindset. Don't allow it to penetrate your heart, because it does bring in all those other things right behind it, obviously leading all the way to defeat.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a powerful event.
I really like that. A comment I've heard you say before is to thrive is to stay humble.
Yes.
Can you dive deeper into this?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, obviously, you know, humility is a great trait, but I think there is a stigma about humility. It's sort of, you know, if I was to say to you, someone's a humble person, I think what we mean by that often, and what we conjure up in our mind is, you know, I think there's a look, you know, like a humble person sort of looks like this. Or, you know, I don't know. People think it's, you know, it's wearing really, you know, unfashionable clothing, or driving, you know, a car that's only worth a few $1,000s. Or people think that's what humility is, but nothing could be further from the truth, right? I actually did a study into this. Jim Collins wrote a great book, From Good to Great. And in this, he studies 1,435 churches, companies. I've applied it to churches, by the way, to companies. And so out of that, he narrows it down to the top 500 companies. And then out of the top 500, there's only 11 companies that have had sustained growth over decades. Only 11 companies that have done that. And so he does a study into these companies to find out what the CEOs are doing that is enabling this. What do they all have in common? And now there's so many variables in all of that, but there were 3 things that he found that they all had in common. And this was it, that the CEOs of these companies were humble, they doubted themselves, and they had drive. Now you would think, really? 100%. Because what it is humility isn't us self-depreciating. It's acknowledging that we have got to where we are by the brilliance of other people around us that are working with us. And you know, when you have that attitude, people love working with you. They love it. And the doubt isn't that you're being self-doubting. No, what you're doing is you're opening up some space in your life to say, I don't know everything. And again, people love working with people who have got some room where you can say, hey, so-and-so, have you thought about? And you don't have that look of course, I know everything. No, it's like, hey, that's a good point. Great people love working with those types of people. So it makes a lot of sense to me that these companies that were just moving forward and continued growth year in, year out, were obviously humble people who were able to attract and keep brilliant people. Mm. So you can be the best CEO on earth, but you have to outwork your plans through a great team.
Yeah.
You know, anyone knows that. If you're a great leader, you need a great team. But do you acknowledge that it's your great team that help you? Or do you take all the credit because those people don't seem to hold on to their teams, which means they're on a constant rebuild. And when you're constantly rebuilding, not only does it cost you lots of money, but it just takes you a long time to get anything done. Yeah. So to thrive, stay humble. And by the way, if I can throw it in there, relationships, stay humble. You know, nothing worse than the wife or the husband who thinks that they know it all the time. It's not fun. Yeah. It doesn't make for a fun relationship. So even in relationships, stay humble. You know, people are people, whether it's in a relationship, mum and dad to their children, or in a company, it's the same thing. People are people, and they all appreciate the same sort of things.
If someone's listening to this and they think, oh, I'm not humble all the time, how do they humble themselves? What do they need to do?
You know, it's as a starting point, I think you need to know what your strengths are. But often we don't acknowledge what our weaknesses are. Mm. And acknowledging your weaknesses doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you strong, because you're strong enough to even know what your weaknesses are. There's nothing worse than someone who doesn't know their weaknesses. That's the person that everyone talks about them behind their back, right? But when you know your own weaknesses, people really love that, because it's like, so you're not pretending to be perfect, but you know where you could possibly fail. Yeah. So I would just say, how well do you know your weaknesses? Like if I was to say to someone, hey, what are some of your weaknesses? If you have that moment of hesitation, do you know what that says? You think you're perfect. Right? And people just don't want to work with that person. They're just like, you're dangerous. No, you need to know what your weaknesses are. So that's a great starting point. What are your weaknesses? Mm. It doesn't mean that you're a less of a human being, because we've all got them. What people just want to know is, how are you covering for them? Yeah. And I think that's really important. So it's a great starting point.
Yeah.
Create some doubt in your life.
Okay. That's good. It's a good point. Yeah. I want you to move us on to encouraging ourselves, because I think most people would have felt the emotion of discouragement. You know, yes. They feel like giving up. They lose hope. They're no longer confident with themselves. But yeah. When we're feeling this way, how do we shift our mindset so that we are confident with ourselves again and we can keep moving forward?
Yeah. Man, hasn't this been a discouraging season? Let's be honest about that. And, you know, what people have been discouraged about is so varied as well. Like for some people, business has been better than ever, Louise. Like they've just moved forward. I know some people in my circle, honestly, they will become multi-millionaires during this season. So they're not discouraged about money, for example, but they are discouraged that they can't catch up with their family. So everyone's got some discouragement going on somewhere, and it's not always to do with business and money, for example. But you know what I've learned about high-achieving people, and I'm on a constant learning curve with this, is you can't wait for people to encourage you. You can't wait for someone to tell you that you're a great person trying to do the best you can. So you've got to learn. Actually, I'll word it this way. You've really got to get your self-talk in check. And you can't underestimate how powerful your self-talk is. You know, for those of us that go to the gym, I mean, I'm trying to really get back to it. It is amazing when I self-talk and just say, you know what, you're going to get 10 reps. You're going to get 10 reps. I've never done 10 reps, but it's a mind thing, and you say it out loud. All of a sudden you're doing it. I mean, that's just something so little, so small. But how's your self-talk going? Because if you have to wait for someone to tell you that you're awesome, you're built for this, you're born for this, you're a great person, you've got great motives, you know, just talk like that. You're not a fraud. You know, I say that to myself, you're not a fraud. You're not a faker. You're the real deal. Now you're thinking, oh, that's a pretty proud stuff. No, it's not. I'm encouraging myself. I'm just encouraging myself. And you know what? I just can't wait for people to do that for me. So I just think there is a real art to it. You know, affirmations, you've obviously heard about affirmations, just repeating things over and over and over again. I think that's great, but you can become a little bit robotic and it's not emotional enough. I think sometimes just looking yourself in the eye and having some great conversations with yourself, I think is really important. You know, the other thing too is, and I've learned this, I'm a gracious person with other people, but the person that I treat the meanest is me. Like if someone makes a mistake, I'm so forgiving. And I've never called someone an imbecile because they've made a mistake. Yet I'll often call myself an imbecile. And I'm thinking, why would I do that? Why would I treat the person that I love myself, in a good way? Why would I call myself an idiot? Like, I'm using strong words now, right? Why would I call myself an idiot? I would never call someone else an idiot. Why would I call myself an idiot? But we often do that. We would never say something unkind to someone else, but we are so unkind to ourselves. And I just think, don't do that. Be kind, because the kinder you are to yourself, then the kinder you'll be to other people too.
Why are we so unkind to ourselves? What is it?
Because we are solely, we know where the blame lies, right? So we sort of know, I could have done better. I could have, whereas, I don't know for sure whether you could have done better. So I've got grace for you, but because it's me talking to me, I know myself very, very well. And I just know that I could have done better. And so we're just really, really tough on ourselves, because I think we weren't taught either way, to be honest, to actually be kind to ourselves. Yeah. Our parents maybe said things like, you need to take a good hard look at yourself, rather than you need to go away and just encourage yourself that you did try your best. No one ever tells us that.
No, they don't.
No. So, I just think, especially for high achievers, comparison is a devil. Yeah. We often just compare ourselves. So we don't even compare ourselves with ourselves. We compare ourselves with someone else. Whereas you just got to learn to say, am I better than what I was last week, last month? Am I a better wife, better husband than I was 2 years ago? Yes, I am. Awesome. Why are you comparing yourself to that girl? She was raised differently. She looks different. She's got a different temperament to you. Why would you compare yourself to her? Like, that is a losing battle all day. But compare yourself to yourself. Are you more generous than you were last year? Yes. You're winning, girl. Come on. Right? But we don't do that. No, we just compare with others. And so it's a losing battle all day.
Yeah.
So, I just think we've got to learn that art. I certainly have to keep doing that for myself.
So do I. I think we all do.
Yeah, it's really important, that one. For sure.
Forgiveness. It's such an easy word to say and very easy to understand, but it's so hard to do. Why is it hard to forgive someone, whether it's someone else or ourselves? And what impact does it have on our lives?
Great question. Big word. I performed a couple of weddings on the weekend, and I do a little talk in between, during the wedding. And the talk that I do is on forgiveness. Interesting.
Tell me more.
I basically say to couples, hey, listen, you guys are holding each other's hands right now, and you'll still be doing this in 30, 50, 60 years if you will put one attribute in place, and that is have a spirit of forgiveness. Honestly, you'll get through everything if you can just have a spirit of forgiveness. And, there's an old saying, it says, forgiveness is an attribute of the gods. It's actually, it's transcendent. When you forgive, it is so counterculture. Because let me tell you what human nature is. I want justice. All right. So when someone does something wrong, the judge in our court system doesn't say, you know what, I forgive you, go home. No, there's a judicial system. You've done the wrong thing. You must pay a price. And let me tell you what can often happen just in our personal lives is when someone's done something wrong to us, they must pay a price. Now, we know we can't hurt them. In other words, we can't go and abuse them. We can't go and break their leg. We shouldn't be anyway. But what we can do is we're going to hurt them on the inside of us. That's what unforgiveness is. I'm hurting you on the inside of me. I'm thinking negative thoughts about you. I want you to be hurt. I want you to be destroyed in one way or another inside of me, because I can't touch you physically, but I can on the inside. Now, what we don't realize is, I think it was Nelson Mandela who said, drinking poison doesn't kill your enemy. And unforgiveness is like having poison inside you, thinking it's going to kill your enemy, and it just doesn't. The only thing it does is it hurts you.
Yeah.
And having a spirit that is just hot with anger and unforgiveness towards somebody, honestly, it's a detriment to your health. It actually uses up CPU space, like on a computer when you've got applications that are open, it actually uses up brain space, that you can't be the best you while you're very busy maintaining an anger, an injustice. I would love something bad to happen to you while you've got that spirit inside. It actually uses up brain space to be creative, to be free flowing, to be loving. And I think we can compartmentalize our lives. Like, I love this, but I'm going to have unforgiveness there. No, it leaks. It leaks like nuclear waste leaking out of a metal barrel, right? You know, it just leaks, and eventually it ends up in every area of your life. And so if there was something I could say to every person, I'd say, you know what, just be a really forgiving person, including yourself. You know, the person that we often hold the most unforgiveness toward is ourselves. How could I have done that? How could I have said that to that person? How could I have done what I did with my body when I was younger? And you can hold unforgiveness toward yourself. You've got to just learn to forgive and just move forward. You know, it's just a better way to live. You know what, there's even been links to cancer. You know, there's been studies, and I'm certainly not suggesting anyone who's got cancer has got unforgiveness, but it sort of seems to be that the people that have got unforgiveness often can have some real detrimental health issues. Definitely.
Because it does act like a poison, so to speak, internally to us, because we're so worked up about something, and it's like it does impact all other aspects of our lives. So
yeah, and we find ourselves sitting at the set of traffic lights having, you know, those conversations in our own head, like what you could have said. And doesn't it sound great the way you should have said it? And I should have said that. The minute that she said that over the boardroom table, I should have just said, but what about you in 2003? Remember you? You know what? That's brain space that you should have been thinking about the next deal that's coming up and how you can get that next client or that next company up and going. And you've wasted 15 minutes on your way to work or home or whatever, thinking about what could have said, you should have said. And I say to myself, you're not Steven Spielberg. Stop making movies in your head. Stop making movies. And they all laugh because they know what I'm saying. Come on, you know, if you're going to make a movie, let it be a rom-com. You know, if you're going to make a movie, let it be, just a film that is going to move you forward, not send you backwards. You don't get out of your car angry. Get out of your car full of joy, right?
Yeah. Because from those stories, I mean, we assume a lot of things as well. So then we've created this whole story in our head, which hasn't even played out or might not necessarily be true. So,
and that's the thing. It might not be true. Like if that person was in the room, they would have a lot of things to say to counter your argument, but they're not there. So you feel like I'm killing this argument. I am so right, but no one's there to really give you the counter argument. So,
correct.
Right. So I just think it's a better way to live, you know, especially if you're dealing with people a lot. You know, some professions, Louise, you know, they're behind a computer all day or whatever they're doing, editing a video. You know, there's no one there to offend you. But when you're with people all day, you're open to just lots of offending comments and arguments. And so you just got to have a free-flowing spirit, you know?
Yeah. During COVID and this season, a lot of people would have lost either businesses, relationships, homes, finances. How do we come back from something like this, and how do we rebuild ourselves back up, whether it's confidence, money, family, whatever it might be?
Yeah, look, that's a brilliant thought. I'm currently speaking, you know, I've got a series going called, you know, Thrive, and I'm just trying to help people to reimagine 2021 and basically get back to their dreams and hopes and really snap out of this. My son, he's a bit of a reader, and he's, you know, trying to be a young entrepreneur, and he's reading a book at the moment by a guy called Viktor Frankl. And he's a psychiatrist that was actually in Auschwitz during the German World War II, essentially. And, you know, he was there for 3 years and he was a survivor, but he saw a lot of people die, obviously, during that time. But he actually did a little bit of a study on the people that survived, including himself, and those who perished. And this is what he discovered. The people who thought about the future, longing for what the past was. In other words, I can't wait until things get back to normal.
Yeah.
Those people didn't survive the camp.
Okay.
The people who reimagined the future, in other words, when this is all over, I can't wait. So he, for example, he was a university lecturer. He didn't imagine one of his classes that he had. He imagined a brand new class with brand new kids. And basically there was no looking back. And I just think it's important. We are living in a new day. Things probably won't get back to normal, whatever normal is anyway. So it's important to just be thinking about the future, but thinking about it in a fresh way. And that will get you excited. There'll be no longing about the past. You'll just be longing for the future, which drags you forward. And I think that is so important. We need to be dragged forward during this time. So for me, I run meetings, and we used to pack out rooms, and there would be atmospheres. I've got to think to myself, if I start longing for that, I'm going to be so discouraged and I won't be able to shake things off. But what I'm getting excited about is doing things in a new way. And so we're creating an outdoor area and an al fresco, and we're creating this area so that we can gather people out there. And you know what? It's lifted my whole team. And we're all just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and can't wait to get things going. So think of new ways. Think of new things. Because let's be honest, there's going to be new opportunities. And if you're very busy being sad and looking backwards, you're going to miss the forward opportunities.
It's incredible.
And there's many of them. So I would just, that's my little pep talk. Moving forward out of COVID.
Thank you so much, Richard. This has been amazing. Always full of good words of wisdom.
Thanks, Louise. And I just love what you're doing. You're inspirational, not just to someone like myself, but to a lot of other people. I just love the way you're always moving forward, and even doing this, really beneficial for people. And by the way, if anybody wants a little bit more information, Louise, you've got my details, and please feel free to forward those on. And if people want a little further insight into some of that, they're more than welcome.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there you have it. Another episode of Gatehouse Insights draws to an end. Thank you for watching, and thank you for sharing this video with your friends. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the Gatehouse Legal Recruitment YouTube channel to see more.